High-stakes battles over the Mueller report continuing tonight. Attorney General Barr pledging this redacted version by mid-April. Dems demanding an unredacted version sooner. This is all, when you think about it, though, a remarkable part of a process where Washington is transfixed on a report that most people haven't seen, including the president and the congressional leaders. The only people who have much of an idea about what's in this nearly 400-page report are, first, DOJ officials, obviously, like Mueller and his supervisors Rosenstein and Barr, and second, the people in Trump's orbit, like the Mueller witnesses who we've talked to provide information about key parts of the probe. We've been gathering their views and testimony directly for that very reason. They were in Mueller's office. They provided information that will inform the report. So keep in mind that long before Trump won the election or Bob Mueller was ever appointed, there was this fact that the probe began with the FBI scrutinizing 4 people linked to Trump: Michael Flynn, Paul Manafort, Carter Page, and George Papadopoulos. And now we have more information. The probe is over. What are the results? Well, when you look at those people who were involved here in this probe into Trump aides, Paul Manafort, convicted on a range of charges. Mike Flynn, convicted for lying to the FBI. George Papadopoulos, convicted for lying. And then the last man standing, Carter Page, not charged, let alone convicted on anything through the conclusion of this probe. So it is with great interest that we welcome back to the beat Carter Page, one of the first 4, as well as Michael Caputo, a former Trump advisor, who has given us his views and insights throughout. I really appreciate both of you coming back on the beat.
Great to be with you.
Absolutely. Carter, how do you feel as the 1 out of the 4 who ended without charges?
I feel bad for everything that's happened over the last several years, but what we saw on on Sunday was basically stating the reality that I've been trying to say, going back to my many conversations with Chris Hayes and, countless discussions in the media. It was almost a no-brainer. And I think what we see now is a turning point where there are much bigger investigations which are now on the horizon. I think, we saw some discussion about that in the House Intel Committee yesterday. So,
is your message to everyone that there were crimes, but none by you?
I think, go back to those the initial letter on Sunday, right? There really was nothing, conspiracy related.
No chargeable election conspiracy.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, and that's the whole point of it. But actually, you and I, we had the first conversation, the first time I ever talked about it on TV, about my May 2017 series of emails that I sent to Mr. Mueller and Mr. Rosenstein. And as I told you, Ari, everything that Mr. Mueller was doing, I think, was on the up and up. But, as per those new investigations were starting, I think there's some big questions on Mr. Rosenstein and the FISA warrants.
But you thought Mueller was fair in what he found about you.
Absolutely.
Let me turn to you, Michael. We've had these discussions. You told us that it was clear from the questions they were looking hard at collusion or believed in it. Let's take a look at that.
In May of 2018, they believed that they still believed in Russian collusion. It was very obvious to me. A lot of the questions they asked me showed it very clearly.
What is your response to them finding no chargeable collusion? Does that mean, in your view, they honestly found the facts?
I believe they dug deeper than anyone even suspected they would. And, say what you will about these fellas, these men and women in the Mueller team. I don't like a lot of what they did. I don't like what they did to Roger Stone, Paul Manafort, etc. But they're a strong team, and they're very thorough. And probably the strongest investigatory team we put together as our federal government has in decades. And if they found no collusion, no evidence of anyone conspiring to collude.
No chargeable collusion.
Right. But at the same time, I believe that they were never going to find it. But I think it's important to note that they were still interviewing people 2 weeks ago with questions about potential Russian collusion.
What does that tell you?
It tells me that they were crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's in this report, which turns out to be a pretty substantial report.
Right. And we expect, our inference being some of what you provided them will be in the report. Some of that goes to why they didn't find an election conspiracy. These are legal developments that people have to take in factually. They also found, they say, obstruction, not by either of you, but they say they found it. When I sat with 4 of the witnesses, 2 of them including you, there was a discussion about who was questioned the most about whom. And Stone's name kept coming up. And you and Mr. Nunberg had an exchange about that. As we watch this back, let's recall that 2 days later, the feds came to Stone's home to arrest him on the indictment. Take a look.
Roger's not Donald Trump. Okay, he's not going to get away with witness tampering. He should shut up. He should shut up.
How is he
when he goes around and lies and says that I was the only person he told as a joke that he met with Julian Assange, give me a break. Give me a break. That was wrong.
Mr. Nunberg was right about where it was headed. Days later, Stone indicted on witness tampering and obstruction crimes. Why did Stone do what he did, providing evidence of obstruction, if there was no chargeable conspiracy?
I'm not the expert on that, but I can tell you a lot of what he's been charged with. The idea, for example, on your show, Randy Credico is saying that he gave no information to Roger Stone, patently false. Roger has all the text messages and emails to prove that, and he'll prove that in court. Credico pushing off, saying it was all Corsi, patently false, and Roger's going to be able to prove that as well. I think he's shown those emails publicly. I pressed Mr. Credico about that on this show last night.
Right. So help us understand then, what did that mean, that there was this discussion about WikiLeaks? It wasn't chargeable. Why did Roger appear to mislead about it?
Well, I don't think he did. I think when he sat in these hearings to testify, that he gave his best responses to his recollection. You remember some of the things he's being criticized for as to how he was conversing with people. They asked him, did you do emails and texts? And he said, I think I did texts and no emails. And somehow it's a lie that he was actually doing emails. Why would Roger Stone do that? Why would he lie about if he's texting and emailing? Why would he lie? He didn't remember.
Mueller says that he repeatedly tried to prevent Randy Credico from testifying. The president has tried to do that very publicly. It's quite obvious, but he's the president. The point on the show was whether Stone would get away with it. Why was Stone, in your view, trying to prevent people from testifying?
I don't think that he was preventing people from testifying. And the idea in the Mueller probe that somehow taking away his dog was a threat of some kind. Roger Stone has been threatening to take away his dog for years. Roger Stone's, he's got a house full of one-legged dogs. He doesn't like the way that Credico treats his dog.
So is this just the bizarre defense, just bizarre banter?
Here's the interesting thing, Ari. After 2 years of this, driving, countless people out of their jobs, causing all kinds of havoc in people's homes, mere witnesses, the Mueller team finds themselves at the end of the hallway, at the end of this entire game, and they're staring at Jerry Corsi, who believes the most wild conspiracies in the world, Roger Stone, and Randy Credico, who wears women's underwear. That's where they find themselves.
Well, I don't know why you're getting into that.
I'm getting into that because dozens of years of Yale Law School education, and they end at the freak show tent.
Well, look, we try to treat people with respect here. You're calling various people, including some that were on the panel with you, freaks. I want to keep it on point. Let's look at the Mueller indictment of Stone on the substance of what you say, which is that Stone, according to Mueller, directed Corsi, not Credico, to contact the head of WikiLeaks. Again, though, and Carter, this goes to a lot of the other folks, you do understand why people around the country are looking at all this and saying, if this is all it was, what Mr. Caputo just outlined, and nothing more, why were there so many lies? Because the president did lie, and he did dictate a misleading statement about Trump Tower, and he did call people rats, and he did try to get Mueller fired, according to his own White House counsel. And his own legal spokesman, Mark Carlo, resigned over those concerns about obstruction crimes. Do you have a view, having been so inside this, of why?
Listen, I think you want to talk about lies. Let's talk about the obstruction of justice in the FISA court, right?
Well, I know you're hot on the FISA, but I'll give you a deal. You answer me my question, and then you can add on about FISA. How about that?
Fair enough.
Listen, I think I'm focused on sort of the macro picture of collusion with the Russians, right? And the whole FISA premise was based on Russian sources, which was then used to mislead a court, right? So most of those people that you're alluding to, I've never had any relationship with. It's hard for me to opine, and I think it's a real shame in general. I think there's a lot that needs to be done from a policy perspective for our country, and it's just too bad we get focused on these things too so long.
What does it tell you that Corsi was very assertively warned about a potential indictment, and then the probe ended without him getting indicted?
I think he could be the luckiest man in the world. I think he should buy a lottery ticket or 10. I'm surprised. I also believe that it indicates that Corsi gave them information that they were looking for, probably on Roger Stone. We'll probably see him brought in as a witness at Roger Stone's trial.
You would expect this, and this Mueller report, which you guys have provided information, you've been deemed cooperative, is going to have more of the clues or explanation to what Corsi and maybe Credico and these others gave up about Stone's attempts to, according to Michael Cohen, brief Donald Trump about getting advance warning on WikiLeaks.
No doubt. I'm not quite sure how much of that will be revealed because we have a trial coming up with Roger in November, and that might present some kind of issues. But, you know, back to your question about why did people lie. I've been wrestling with that myself. You know, so I think a lot of things that have been labeled lies were not lies. But in addition, I think when we look back at how this all started, how Hillary Clinton's campaign tried to create the Russian collusion narrative in order to discredit the president's election, the president oftentimes would talk about the Russian interference in our election and Russian collusion. And he wouldn't make the distinction between the two.
But are you saying that people were overly defensive and political?
I believe that there are a lot of people around the president, including myself.
If Donald Trump hadn't fired James Comey and talked about Russia, none of you might have been in this.
Well, as you know, at that time, Donald Trump thought he was doing the bidding of the Democrats. In fact, on Stephen Colbert that night, when they announced Comey was fired, everybody stood up and cheered.
Do you think that was the worst advice he ever got?
Well, I think it was among the worst advice he ever got.
Carter?
Well, I think when we get what Senator Chairman Graham has been asking for with this second special counsel looking into all these questions as to what exactly Mr. Comey was doing throughout the 2016 election and the early months of the new administration, I think we'll have a much better sense.
And lightning round, yes or no, you expect there to be pardons, yes or no?
Yes.
No idea. I have no relationship with the White House.
And you expect the Mueller report to add to good news on obstruction or subtract from it for Trump?
I think it'll be a mixed bag. There'll be some bad things in there, too.
I think generally good.
I really appreciate that we've been able to draw on your primary experience both throughout this process, which I think informed our understanding, and now afterward. And you're both in a position to tell your stories, and you are 1 out of 4.
Thanks, sir.
1 out of 4. The other 3 charged. Carter Page on the beat. Michael Caputo, hope to have you both back. I appreciate it. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.